So picture with me a coffee shop and a back alley. At first glance, it seems like any other coffee shop. It is filled with all the usual things, tables and chairs and drinks and pastries, employees, customers, etc. In this particular coffee shop, though, there's an extra intensity in the conversations and many, many noticeable clocks on the walls. The coffee shop I am describing is from a beautiful new book called Before the Coffee Gets Cold. The story centers around the special coffee shop and the unique opportunity it offers its customers. While in this coffee shop, the characters can do the impossible. They can travel backward or forward in time to have a conversation with somebody special to them. As, and with all such stories, there are specific rules that have to be followed with these conversations. Nothing that happens in these conversations can change the present. For example, if a character is sick or has passed away, nothing that happens in this coffee visit can change that. They cannot leave the coffee shop. And the last rule, and the hardest one, is that the conversation can only last as long as it takes for the coffee to get cold. Some of the characters try to extend their time by getting refills, but there is a time limit on these conversations, and they are acutely aware of that. Just imagine for a second that you had this chance. This is not the first book to imagine it. In fact, we have all imagined this at some point. Just one more minute, one more cup of coffee. The book describes 4 beautiful and heartbreaking coffee visits. The first one involves a couple who had a misunderstanding, and this misunderstanding led to their breakup. According to the first rule, they can't reconcile during this coffee visit to change the present, but they can uncover their mistake and move forward differently because of it. A second story describes a story about a husband and wife. In this scenario, the husband has early onset Alzheimer's, and the nurse wife goes back in time to receive a letter that he wrote to her and to spend time with her husband once more while he is aware of who she is. Anyone who has experienced this illness in their family knows that you would give anything just to get a little bit more time with your loved one. The third story is about a mother who dies shortly after childbirth, and she uses her visit to visit this child that she never ever actually got to know. Each of these emotional stories are filled with beautiful heartbreak and much for us to ponder in this moment of Yizkor and memory. We come to the Yizkor service in some ways for our own coffee visits with our loved one. The fourth narrative tells the story of 2 sisters. For the Yizkor service, allow me to call them by Hebrew names. The story describes an estrangement between the siblings, Leah and Esther. Esther has moved away from her family and their family business, and then Leah had to take her place. Leah becomes resentful because of this, and over the years, Esther has avoided Leah and stayed away from her family home. Esther has rebuffed all of Leah's efforts to reconcile with her, but when Leah is tragically killed, Esther is filled with regret. When we meet her, Esther wants just one more cup of coffee with her beautiful sister Leah. She desperately wants the chance to make amends and reconnect with her one more time. So Esther uses her coffee visit to do just that and uncovers that, in fact, Leah is not actually resentful for her at all. She just wanted to run the family business together. Going back to the first rule, they can never have this opportunity. But Esther uses every second that she can to spend time with her precious Leah. The final story is the one that has stayed with me. We know we have this deep longing to have one more cup of coffee with our loved one. With our extra time, we want to say those things that we didn't get to say, or heal the unresolved tension, or just tell our loved one that we love them just once more. Just once, one more time, one more cup of coffee. In each of these stories, the character visiting their loved one know that saying goodbye is going to break their hearts again. But each of them know that it is worth it to have that precious moment one more time. None of the characters want to say goodbye. Some drink their very last sip very quickly just to get it over with, while others wait as long as they possibly can to avoid that final goodbye. Would you? Would we all take this painful heartbreak to have another goodbye, to have a few more precious moments with our loved one? If I had a chance, I would have coffee with my grandfather on my mother's side. He died when I was 2, so I never got a chance to actually get to know him really in person, but only through stories. He was English and he would love to read. He was full of life and optimism until the day he died. But despite my lack of time with him, I feel like he has had a big imprint on me. If I could have coffee with him now, I would tell him that I too married somebody English. I would tell him that his great-grandchildren wear glasses just like he did, and that they also too love to read. I would tell him that the values that he has shared with my mother and the love of Judaism that he instilled in her was passed down to me, and I have in turn passed it to my children. I would love to hear his voice just once. I would love to give him a hug. I know it would be heartbreaking to say goodbye to him, but it would be worth it to see him. Everyone in this room has a cup of coffee you know you would cherish. You know you would take this opportunity, if you could, just have one more minute with that person in your life. Coffee itself is a powerful image, and perhaps coffee is already something that is painful for you. Maybe you used to have coffee with your loved one every day. Maybe they used to brew it for you in the morning so it would be ready when you wake up. Or maybe you would make it for them. Maybe there's a certain coffee shop that you used to go to and you can't drive by it anymore without thinking about them. Maybe you remember exactly how they took their coffee, and every now and again you order it just so you can feel close to them. Maybe it is a daily reminder that your loved one is no longer there. This longing to be with our loved ones once again is not just the premise of the book, but it is embedded to our liturgy as well. In the Amidah, the core prayers of our daily Shabbat and holiday worship, the second of these prayers in this section is called the Giverot. And it begins with these words, Atah gibor le'olam Adonai. And this translates to, you, God, are eternal strength forever. We usually continue with the words, Mehaye hakol Rav lahoshia. This translates to, you, God, give life to all. And when we say Mehaye hakol, the words that we normally recite, we are praising God and giving thanks to God who gives life to all. This prayer is stating that God's strength is partly given by giving life to us and all around. And these words remind us of the incredible gift that life is, not just for us, but everything all around us every day. But there is also a second option for the words in the Giverot. Instead of saying Mehaye hakol, we can say Mehaye Matim. And this has a very different meaning. This translates to God who revives the dead. Our people did once believe that one day all souls of our loved ones would be returned. So as a nod in our prayer book to these two concepts, our prayer book contains both options. Often in the traditional congregations, they say the words Mehaye Matim, but it is thought of as a metaphor. Logically, we know it is impossible to bring back those we have lost, even for God. But we know that sometimes this longing in our hearts transcends everything else, transcends logic, and transcends metaphor. So today, on this Yom Kippur, in this Yizkor service, we want to say these words not as metaphor, but reflecting our own desire to be reunited with our loved ones, even if it is only for the briefest amount of time. The universal longing that we all feel is what has made this book so popular, because we want this time with our loved one while the coffee is hot. So I invite you now to take a few minutes to sit with your memories of your loved one. Who is it that you would visit with your cup of coffee? What would you want to say to them? What would you want to hear? And how, heartbreakingly, would you say goodbye to them again? The only comfort we have in our aching hearts today is our precious memories, the times that we spent together, and knowing that we are not alone walking this path of loss. We share in the pain as we sit together and alone in our grief. We comfort each other. We support one another in our remembrance. We will always love them. We will always miss them. We think about them with love today and every day. We take a few minutes now to think about our loved ones and imagine, who is it that you would share your last cup of coffee with? We take a few moments of reflection now.